Those three colors are the main ones we are going to use to paint the turtle, but you will see that we are going to use a couple more in the next steps. First of all, I want to build the different blocks of color on the figure. So using the gray scale that I have done with my first step, which I didn't record because I have repeated this process 100 times. I generate a grayscale with black and white using the airbrush, but you can use the spray or whatever you have to do something similar. And the idea is with the most luminous color, we cover all the areas that are white. With this intermediate color, we are going to paint the intermediate areas of gray. The medium gray is going to be painted with this kind of medium green. And this medium green is always next to the luminous one, the first one that we have applied. Now, by adding this ocean blue plus a bit of black, I'm generating or creating the shadow tone. The ocean blue is to have a bit more of saturation instead of using only black, which is at the end a very dark color that will destroy the saturation of the green. This color is more interesting. And the shadow is going to be placed next to the medium tone. You can have a shadow tone next to a light tone. It's always next to the medium tone, as you see. It's very rough, but if you place the colors correctly, the figure is going to look more or less painted, we can say. I'm repeating this process with the red tones of the fabrics. The most luminous red is going to be placed in the white areas. A medium tone of red generated by using blue and a bit of black again is going to be placed next to this previous one because it's a medium tone. And remember that you have to keep some parts of the red to place the maximum shadows. That means that some of them are going to be still white, or you have to cover the previous color. It's up to you. But in my case, as you see, I generated a very dark, it's not red really, it's like a very dark blue. You can take advantage of this color to outline the shadow gaps of the element. The dark lining, I think it's dark lining. And now I'm going to paint other elements, base colors only, because I prefer to have some idea of the colors I'm going to use in all the elements of the figure before I start working on any other parts deeply. So I painted the leather parts with this dark brown, and now with dark gray, bluish gray, I'm going to paint the non-metallic areas. In this stage, I didn't decide if I'm going to paint everything in comic style or not. So I'm placing the colors like if I'm painting in blocks of colors, because it doesn't matter if I paint the figure in comic style or not. I can take advantage of these or those blocks of colors to paint the figure faster. So I'm placing this dark gray in the shadow areas of the non-metallic areas, this medium gray as a medium tone, and finally by adding a bit of white, I'm going to place the maximum highlights on those parts. The idea is more or less the same that we follow in the skin. Areas faced to the light are going to be obviously more luminous, and areas faced to the shadow, to the lower part of the figure or to the ground, are going to be darker. Well, I continue covering the different elements with base colors. In this case, this is the front cell and the back part of the cell, or the big part of the cell. As you see, I have painted it in very dark brown, and I'm going to paint it instead of comic. I'm going to use some more realistic looking on this part, making it, in my opinion, a bit more interesting. Maybe comic style in this part is going to be a bit, I don't know, maybe simple. So over this dark base color, I'm placing lines going to the up part of these geometrical shapes of the cell. You can keep part of the areas still white to take advantage of this and cover them easier with the luminous, this more luminous khaki green. Now I'm applying wash over all the cell to integrate the texture and making it a bit more luminous because it was too dark. And as you see, now it's a bit more homogeneous, so I can continue working in the texture by adding more, in this case, yellow ochre. The idea is to build different layers of texture in the cell till the point you are satisfied with the result. I recommend you to outline the inner parts between the different elements of this cell, those geometrical parts. And in the final stage of the texture, the final highlights of the texture, the direction of the brush strokes, it's better if they are going to, or from the tip of the geometrical mountains of the cell to the outer parts, because the brush stroke is going to finish or is going to end in a thinner line, making it a bit more not precise, is more realistic, more integrated, more subtle. Subtle is the word. In some parts is not so important, but in bigger areas like those ones on the back, it's more important to have those thin lines or those thin ends of the lines in the texture. You can add some glazes only in the planes of light to integrate the texture and at the same time to make those planes a bit more luminous. You can boost with a final highlight of texture, and to end the process of this cell using a very diluted dark blue. With the airbrush, we are going to shot from below some bursts of this color, and as you see, it's only affecting the lower part of those shapes, boosting the contrast and improving the volume, the volumetry. And this is the bonus track. You can blend the blocks of color by using this dark blue, because we have dark blue, more or less dark blue, in our shadow layer. So as you see, with a bit of control in the airbrush and shooting from the correct direction, we can blend the block that we have painted in our first step. Even you can take advantage of the properties of the airbrush and add some shadows in the non-metallics, for example. But anyway, I decided to paint it in comic style 100%. So instead of continue using the airbrush to blend the blocks or using the brush to blend the blocks, I'm going to boost even more the blocks. So what you have to do to make the comic style, once you have work in your blocks, your different blocks of color, we are going to improve them. We have to make them solid, very solid. The color had to be flat in every block. And also we have to make softer all the perimeter of every block. That means that they have to have a more precise contour, more precise perimeter, and the cut is going to be even more obvious than before. That means that in some areas where we are not going to have the advantage of a gradient in the future, we had to add a bit more light than before. For example, in the face, as you see, I have had some spots of light, very tiny spot of light in the mouth. You see how the green, the light green, is very solid right now, especially in comparison with the surrounding colors of the green. But now we are going to do the same thing with the rest of the layers. In this case, now we have very clear in mind that we are going to have a limited quantity of colors to represent the volumetry. So I'm going to use a more luminous green to cover the intermediate tone. But it's more or less the same thing. We are going to have intermediate tone next to luminous tones or next to dark tones, but we are not going to have dark tones next to luminous tones. You see how these dark volumes, in this case of the muscles of the arm, that were super dark, now have a tiny highlight of intermediate tone. And here in the face, we have a highlight that I add in this stage. So we need an intermediate tone because the face was too dark. My initial idea was to work with only 3 tones, but I think that adding a 4th tone and even a 5th tone that I'm going to use in the next step is going to look even better. So with this first level of shadow, I'm placing this dark color in between the intermediate tone and the maximum shadow. You will perceive these kind of things easy because you will notice that some areas of the figure are super dark and they need a bit more of light, but the intermediate tone is too much maybe, so this color in between them is enough. This bluish green, it's perfect and fits perfect in those areas that are super dark. The less colors we are using in the figure, in the different blocks, the simpler are going to be in terms of volume or volumes. We have to make them very simple, very like a sketch of color, because we only have 3 colors. But if we add more colors, for example, now I'm adding the 5th color as a final highlight, we can be a bit more complex, adding a bit more detail on those different volumes. and it still looks like a comic style. Adding this maximum highlight only in very specific areas like the knuckles or areas of the muscles that are very exposed to the light. And think in what I'm going to say to you. If you add infinite blocks of colors, what you are going to achieve? A gradient. So at the end, working in blocks of color or in a comic style, it's like working in the volumes in a very simple way, and will help to you to improve your volume interpretation. Because if I want, I can make a gradient in between every block of color, and I'm going to achieve the same result or very, very similar result to a classic painting of smooth gradients in the figure. I'm boosting the reds, as you see, using this red from Chimera, which is my favorite. In the luminous areas, I'm recovering the medium tone of the red and the shadows on the red. So I'm repeating the same process that I follow in the green skin, but with the red. This blue-green with white I'm going to use is to paint those elements of the skin. I don't know how to call them. They are like, I don't know, scales or something like this. I don't know. Anyway, I'm painting with a medium tone the shapes that are faced to the light. You see? And now I'm adding a final highlight, basically outlining the edges of those elements. Sometimes less is better than making something very complex. Now time to paint the leather. I'm going to mix the comic with my classic style of painting leather with texture. So I'm placing a highlight in the wrinkles and volumes of the leather. Remember that the arms are like cylinders, so the volume of those parts are very easy to interpret. And now with a medium tone, adding a bit of black and a bit of red to keep a bit more saturation of the brown, I'm painting the intermediate tone. And once again, the intermediate tone is next to the highlight areas and the shadow areas. But the highlights are not touching or next to shadows. And over these blocks of colors I have placed, I'm outlining and adding texture by adding, in this case, yellow ochre. If you have seen other of my videos, you know that I'm painting always leather by adding texture. I build the volume with this technique, which I like a lot. So I'm doing exactly the same in this leather, but working over a previous volumetry work that I have done with the blocks of colors. The non-metallic parts are going to be painted in a classic way. That means that I'm going to add a bit more of contrast on each plane of the non-metallics. But you can notice that if you have placed correctly the different planes, the upper ones more luminous, the intermediate ones, and the lower planes darker, only by outlining the edges and increasing a bit more the contrast in all those parts, only a bit, the non-metallic is working pretty good. You don't need to create super high contrast in every plate of every non-metallic metal part of your miniatures. You need to interpret it correctly, the volumes and the shape itself of the different parts, and you will achieve a great effect. Outlining is super important, in my opinion, especially in small figures. Those brights are my comic add-on to the non-metallic parts of the figure. And I'm repeating more or less the same process on the weapons. In this case, I start with a medium tone next to a dark tone, next to a medium and high tone in the tip of the weapon. And see how it changes when you add the outline, when you outline the edges. This is a very simple and easy non-metallic. This is not a complex non-metallic, but you see how if you outline them properly, they look quite good. The claws are just two colors, the area of light and the area of shadow. And with cold white, which is a super white color of Vallejo, I'm going to add final sparks of light in the non-metallic areas, and I'm boosting a bit more only some of the edges. This white is even more white than the white itself, so I recommend you to take one of these whites from your store and keep it to add those brights in the figures. Finally, the base, I'm going to paint it in a very easy way. I'm placing this ochre in the front part, and I'm going to build a bluish tone in the back part, like if the turtle was in, I don't know, maybe in a dark alley or something like this. So the back part is more cold, more dark. The front one is more warm and more luminous, with glossy black and smoke from Vallejo, which is some kind of oil paint. It is acrylic, but looks like an oil when you use in the bases. You can place in the gaps in between the different bricks and play with them when they are still humid, creating dirt basically in the base and something more organic. I'm correcting a bit more the bricks with a brush and the base color, creating some texture, and now by adding a bit more of light, in this case by adding a bit more white with this beige color, I'm adding texture. A shade from Game Workshop in the front part with this brown shade, and in the back with violet and black to keep it cold and dark. And over this with a bluish gray. I'm generating a bit of more texture and recovering part of the color that I have lost with the wash. And with everything finished, I'm changing a bit the red by adding this powerful red with a bit of yellow and a bit of German orange or salmon. It's German orange, sorry. The idea is to place a more saturated color here. You see how it looks more saturated and more red at the end. And this is our finished turtle, Ninja Turtle. You can see the blocks perfectly defined. They are not blended in any way, but he looks amazing in my opinion. This is a super interesting exercise to improve your painting skills. So take advantage of this video, practice, and if you have any doubt, put in the comment box and it will answer as soon as possible. See you in the next one. Bye bye, and thank you for watching.